Series that's based on Kyle Idleman's book entitled The End of Me. Today we're going to find out why we need to be helpless to be empowered. Now this seems like another one of Jesus's upside down and backwards teachings for us, because it seems like it's ingrained in our culture that we're supposed to take care of business on our own, without seeking any assistance. This may explain why the most beloved Bible verse is not actually found in the Bible. Any idea what it might be? Nobody? You'll probably recognize it as soon as I say it. The phrase is, God helps those who helps themselves. Now you know it. Yes. Just about everyone knows that phrase, and people are apt to quote it. While we're trying to live by this phrase, it can't be found anywhere in Scripture. Perhaps God just forgot to put it in there. No, I don't think so. I think a better explanation would be that God actually helps those who can't help themselves. God helps those who are in the midst of a crisis and asks someone to help them. When we admit that we are helpless, we are then open to receive the transforming help that God offers. When we come to the end of ourselves, we find Him there waiting to give us what we've been so desperate for all along. If we turn to John chapter 5, there we find a man who has been crippled for 38 years. That's a long season of helplessness. There might have been a time when he dreamed of a miracle, perhaps lying awake at night thinking that tomorrow will be different. My legs will be strong and I'll have a bright future. But morning after morning after morning, that miracle never came. Nearly 40 years passed, and his spirit was hardened. He stopped praying, and he stopped hoping. He accepted the reality that he was completely helpless. Now, it was in this state of hopeless need that he encountered Jesus. According to John, this man spent his days in a public place, lying on one of the 5 covered porches that surrounded the pool of Bethsaida in the city of Jerusalem. This pool was associated with healing, and some Bibles have a footnote explaining a legend about this pool. It seems that it was believed that every once in a while, an angel would come down and stir the water. And it was believed that the first person that entered the water would be cured. Because of this legend, this pool became a magnet for the sick, for the blind, for the hurting, and the helpless people. They all came, they spent the day watching and waiting for the waters to stir. Now, as a 38-year pool dweller, this man was a local institution. But you have to wonder about his motives at this point in the story. Is he really still struggling to get to the water when it stirs after all this time? Perhaps when he first came to the pool, he would have believed that today's the day. In the early years, he probably lived on happy thoughts and a few coins from passers-by. But after a few years, though, he became rooted to that spot. And he expected nothing but the coins that fell into his hands. Hopelessness was now a part of the scene. And then Jesus comes along and he sees this man and he knows his story. That's when Jesus asks him a question that seems so upside down. Let's look at verses 5 and 6 there. It says, one who has been an invalid for 38 years was there. And when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" Now, it might seem like a strange question to ask a man that's been severely handicapped and spends every day beside this pool for 38 years. Do you want to get well? That'd be like asking the question, do people who go to the gym want to get in shape? It seems like a silly question, unless it's a loaded one. The answer is not self-evident. You see, there's lots of people who like to hang around the waters without actually wanting to be healed. There are a lot of people who go to church but don't really want God's help. People do things for lots of reasons, not always the most obvious ones. They have motives that they themselves may not even understand. So, Jesus sees this man and he gets right to the issue. He says, "You've been stuck in neutral for a long time. Do you really want something better? Or have you laid down roots and become comfortable in your quiet desperation and your low expectations?" Let me ask you, what kind of person wouldn't want help? The answer is someone that is afraid of change. This man was sick for nearly 4 decades, and it was the only life he knew. He may not have liked it, but he learned how to survive as a beggar. Life was tough, but he never had to learn a trade or do hard work. His home was his mat, and his community was the pool. Now, if we were to be honest with ourselves, there's a little bit of this man in each one of us. We accept a lot of things that we know could be better. We decide that God must want us here because if he didn't, he would make something else happen. In reality, we blame God for where we are in life. And if we blame God, why would we ask him for help? After a while, we get used to things, and a limited life is less frightening than the thought of change. Resignation is better than disappointment. We see this attitude in individuals, and we see it in churches. So I ask, who wouldn't want help? The answer is someone who is in denial of reality. After all these years beside the pool, this man no longer had a healthy idea of what life could be. He didn't know what it would be like if he stood and he walked and he took ownership of his life. Instead, he spent every day surrounded by hurting people. So unhealthy had become his new normal. We do the same thing. We believe that the situations or the problems will just fade away on their own if we don't address them. Instead, they fester and they grow. Why don't we just ask for help? Well, eventually the time comes along when we approach that tipping point, and we are tired of the anxiety, and we realize it's time to seek assistance. But we've waited a long time. The situation has gone from bad to worse. And then we have second thoughts. We step back and we look at ourselves and we feel ashamed. Asking for help requires humility because it requires us to come as we are and to present ourselves with our problems on full display for everyone to see. We live under the tyranny of what other people think. Pride demands a terrible price. We will actually suffer as long as we think we can suffer quietly without others knowing about it. Nothing is going to change until we come to the end of ourselves and we willingly ask for help. Until someone wants to get well, there's not much that can be done. So Jesus asked this man, "Do you want to get well?" And the man answers him, "Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." This man gives Jesus this well-worn excuse that boils down to, "I can't." In the book Happiness is a Choice by Frank Murnith and Paul Meyer, they discuss this tendency of Christians to say, "I can't," when they find themselves confronted by obstacles. These doctors identify this as a lame excuse and insist that patients instead use the words, "I won't." Instead of saying, "I can't control my spending," it would become, "I won't control my spending." You see, the sooner people understand the place of their own free will, the sooner they begin to move towards a cure. But there are times that people really and truly can't. This book of Kyle's and this sermon series is about coming to the end of ourselves, which is the beginning of the real adventure with Christ. We can make the choice to align ourselves with that opportunity. We face realities that force us to say, "I am at the end of my abilities. I've done what I can. I cannot live this life without Christ. I can't handle the problem of my own sin. And I can't rise and walk on my own." Even when we get to this point, we have to ask for help. We say to Jesus, "I can't, but you can." When we finally come to the point of admitting that we need help, we are getting closer to the end of ourselves. This man beside the pool had not quite reached that point. Maybe there were too many people willing to let him keep living that same old life. He tells Jesus there isn't anyone to help him. Notice that he isn't saying that he doesn't need help. He clearly does. He just doesn't have the helpers. How long ago did he stop asking for help? While he may have stopped asking others for help, he at least acknowledges to Jesus that he does need some kind of help. And you know what? We make the same mistakes this man made. We look for that pool. We go where the crowd goes and we just hang out. We follow the ways of the world and we tend to be disappointed whenever life never gets better. And then Jesus finds us. And he wants to change us once and for all. Jesus says to this man, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." Now, if you look at that, there's 3 action verbs in one sentence, which is a life-changing moment for this man. And it's tied directly to a call of action from Jesus. Jesus always gives us something to obey. He wants us to move from passive to active once again. So he comes to us and he says, "Get up, make your bed and move out. Life awaits you." So why not ask for help now? Well, maybe you hear those voices around you saying, it's not the time. It's too late. It's too embarrassing. Just wait it out and work it out. Maybe one of those voices is your own. You have drifted too far down the creek and you have given up and resigned yourself to keep on drifting. But there is no distance. There is no time limit. There's no reason or excuse. Jesus will come when you've reached the end yourself. He'll come when you are helpless and out of power. This man in John chapter 5 learned that 38 years was not too late. The good news is that it's not too late. And it never has been. And there has never been a better time, a more perfect time than the present moment. That is always the time in which Jesus wants to meet you. The life you have is not the life that you must accept. You need only to ask for help. And the more helpless you are, the better. Because then you find yourself more open to the help that only Jesus can offer. He meets you right there at the end of yourself.